Cool. Hi, thank you so much for talking to us. Can I
Yes.
ask you to briefly introduce yourself, please?
Yes. So my name is Amarjeet Kaur. I am from Delhi, but for last 6 years, I think from 2018 onwards, I am working at Wildlife Institute of India in Dehradun. And I joined here after my post graduation from Delhi, and then I started working on Amur falcons first as a researcher, and I worked on the migration of Amur falcons and working with communities to see how their perception changes and all. So that is still going on. I'm still part of it. And parallelly, I started working on another migratory species, that is the barn swallow we are going to talk about. So for barn swallows, I'm working along the Himalayan arc. So barn swallows are summer breeding visitors in the Himalayan region. And my primary work involves that I go to these sites in the Himalayas, look for their nest, talk to people, look around where all they are nesting, record the nest attributes, nest site selection, and also see how these birds are different from one another, how the populations are different. So populations that are breeding in Kashmir, how they are different than other populations. And one key aspect is also to interact with local people and see their perception and their knowledge on these species. And last year I joined as a post of scientist here at Wildlife Institute of India. So yeah, this is all about me.
Nice. Thank you so much. So, coming to the barn swallows, I think you know them well enough to describe a day in the life of a barn swallow. So, what would that
Yeah.
look like?
So a day in the life of barn swallow depends on the season of the year. So there
Mhm.
can be so if they are nearing the summer season, if the summer season is about to arrive, so a day in the life of barn swallow would be too much rush, too much anxiety that they have to reach to their breeding sites as soon as possible because they would not want to miss the good nesting site. The males
Right.
specifically, they have to reach earlier to spot their territory and then plan how they are gonna pair up. If the female is still around, they will pair up together. But sometimes when there is a mortality or the partner is not there, they look for another partner. So that would be a day when they are in need to go to the breeding sites. But if they're nesting, so then the day would appear very differently. So at the initial stages of the nesting, both the male and female would be busy looking for wet mud around the
Mhm.
nesting area, and they'll be going and picking those mud balls and then coming back to the property and sticking the mud on the wall to make it like a cup shape. And within 5 or 6 days, the nest is complete. And then they will start looking for feathers to line the nest, and the day becomes even more busy when they have chicks in the nest. So both the parents would take their turns, bring the food for the babies, and that's how they would raise their young ones. So that's how the day looks like when they are during their breeding season. Yes, yeah.
It looks like they're busy all the time.
They're busy all the time.
Okay, so lots of questions. You first mentioned migration, right?
Yes.
And you say they feel a certain anxiety to migrate. Can you tell us more about that?
Okay. So I mentioned this term anxiety because when this discovery of bird migration started, there was just a German ornithologist who came up with this term, Zugenro. That means the
Right.
anxiety to start with the migration and all. So that is the anxiety of migration. So barn swallows or any other migratory bird, they detect the changes in the season. So when the season is shifting to summer or the winter is receding, they have to come back to their breeding sites to start nesting. And these birds are insectivorous birds, aerial insectivorous. So they only feed on insects that are present in the air. And insects, as we know, are more abundant in summer season. So, in overall, these birds track the presence of abundant insects across their distribution. So, in summer months, they come to the Himalayan region, stay here for 6, 7 months for the breeding time, from March onwards till July. And once the season shifts to monsoon, these birds start to leave their breeding sites because they would not want to get wet in the rain because If there is persistent rain, then again they won't be able to go out and chase insects and bring insects for the babies. So once the monsoon hits, all these birds start to come down towards southern India. So till now, we do not know that whether all the populations that are breeding in the Himalayan region are going to South India or maybe beyond that. During the passage, we see a lot of barn swallows along the coast, along the western coast of India. So maybe some birds are actually going to Africa, like the other populations that are breeding in
Wow.
Europe. Yes, so these are very tiny birds, 20
Yes.
gram or 17 gram in weight, but they undertake quite a long migration. So that is how they detect. So once they are in the southern India or Africa, they are enjoying the summer season there because it's cold up here in the Himalayas, but there it's summer. So again, they track the summer season, they track the insects, and how this is how they carry out their migration. So the changing in seasons are really the trigger of their
And
migration.
what particular cue are they picking up? Is it changing temperatures? Is it daylight? What is it?
As per we know, as per our understanding, it is the changing daylight and temperature both, and also some. This is also part of my research, which I'm looking for at right now. So there could be some seasonality shifts due to monsoon also, because the monsoon it will affect the productivity of the area. So that is how they are tracking. So whole of it, like temperature, rainfall, and daylight, day
Okay.
hours. Yes.
So they finish their breeding before the monsoon, in the
Before the
pre-monsoon.
monsoon arrives. Yes,
Wow.
yes.
Okay. And then they move away. They're, are they diurnal? Are they more active at dawn and dusk, or do they feed throughout the day?
They do feed throughout the day, especially when they are in the nesting period. But yes, you would see more activity, more foraging activity during the day, early hours and dusk, because in the afternoon it gets really hot, and sometimes they like to take rest. But especially if it is nesting season, female would be incubating the eggs, and male would be bringing the food for the female also at
Okay.
times. But as soon as it gets dark, both the adults are inside their shops or houses, wherever they're nesting, and they spend
Correct.
their entire night there only. So maybe I'll talk about that more
Oh, so they spend
later.
the night at the nest.
Yes, at the nest when they're
Okay.
nesting. Yes.
And in the non-nesting season, would they perch on
Non-nesting season.
trees?
Yeah, and so they do perch on trees, but very often we see them perching on the reed beds near the wetlands
Okay.
and near the agricultural areas. So that is
Right.
the major non-wintering site. That is why for these kind of birds, especially for the farmland birds or agricultural associated bird, the disappearing wetlands and also the disappearing grasslands are one of the reasons behind the decline of these birds, because during the
Right.
non-breeding season they are very much dependent on these kind of habitats.
Okay.
Yes.
And you said they bring wet mud to make their nests.
Yes.
Where do they get this wet mud from?
Okay, so it's interesting. So when I observe these birds during the nesting season, they're very opportunistic. So sometimes I see that they are flying little away from their nest. So this is the village or this is the colony where they are nesting, but then they will fly little out. And if somebody is just washing their car or somebody is just using the hose and pipe to something, some water is there, and if the mud is loose, they get that wet mud. Very, so it's like more opportunistic. And
Wow.
also the shower that we get, initial shower in this transitioning season in summer,
Yes.
that time also they do get the opportunity to find more wet mud around the nests. Yeah. So then that is how they pick the mud. So I have seen this is the shore where they're nesting, and just outside they found one mud pool, and they're just picking the mud from there and sticking it on the. Right.
That's
Yes.
really smart decision making, no? Very
Yes.
flexible decision making.
Yes.
That's quite incredible. Also, I think just to see birds handle material like mud in a way like that to build something is just fantastic, no?
Yes.
Because we always think of them as using their beaks to eat or drink or whatever, or
Yes.
preen at most,
Yeah.
and then you have them build something.
all sorts of smart things that they do.
So the nest is just stuck on the wall, is it? It's mud, plastered
Yes.
almost.
It's
Wow.
entirely mud, but they do get also the grasses or the straw, the dry grass,
Yeah,
and they
too.
weave the grass around that mud balls. So it's like they have
That's
woven
amazing.
the whole nest together and made it like a cup shape along the wall. So people in Himachal area also and in Uttarakhand, they tell me they call it in Himachal, they call these birds guthni because they're
Literally.
actually gooth rahe hain, weaving
Uh,
the
uh,
nest or
oh,
something.
wow.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
incredible, actually. Yeah.
Wattle and daub, that
Oh,
technique of building,
water
no?
and it's exactly wattle and daub.
Yes,
That's amazing.
yes,
No?
Yes.
Imagine wattle and daub is a technology that is used by multi-species. That's amazing. That's
yes.
incredible.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you also said they're territorial.
They're territorial. Yes.
Do we
So,
know that if they pair for life?
okay. So it's a very interesting question because recently, only last week, I visited one of the sites near Dehradun. That is one of my field area near Masuri. And so we had put rings on these birds to see their nest site fidelity, whether they're coming back to the same nest or not. And we did find that one pair is nesting together for last 4 years. So they do like to be paired up with the same partner unless or some mishappening or something has happened, then only they do shift their partners, but otherwise they pair for life. That it what it appears for now from the ringing
Yeah,
data
yeah,
that
yeah.
I'm getting. Yes.
Yeah, that's good information.
Yes.
And territorial, as in they will drive away other pairs?
Yes, it happens during the initial stages of the breeding season. So, more mature males or more experienced male, they would come and they would try to mark their territory or as in the previous nest they were nesting. Because even through the ringing data, I had found that they are coming back to the same nest, not just the same village or say
Yeah,
like
yeah,
some shop, but they're coming back to the same nest. So that is how they have the hold on their territory. But if there is something like if some other male is coming or they're trying to snatch away the territory, especially in the cases where the nesting sites are limited, where they
right.
have limited space in the area, so they do compete for the nest, and that's how the we see the territoriality even among the swallows, among the barn swallows themselves, and also with other coexisting species that occur, like the red drum swallow or house sparrow. I've seen a lot of competition with those
Oh,
species also. Yes, and which is really interesting. So we generally know that house sparrows are in decline, but through our work, we could see that in the village areas, sparrows are pretty dominant and they're chasing out the barn
right.
swallows and red drum swallows.
But they also nest in clusters, no? Like some of
Uh,
these barn swallows will
oh,
also sometimes nest together, right? Next to each
okay.
other.
Okay, so barn swallows are solitary nesters, but if the shop or if the property is little, if there is a space, enough space, they do tend to build their nest in the same building. So
Okay,
and mostly I have seen one or maximum two or three nests in one property. But
okay.
when I went to Kashmir, in a single house, I had seen 14 nests in the same
Right,
house.
right.
It depends on again, I think, nest site availability and also how much protection they're getting and
Okay.
how old is their relation with that property.
Yes.
But there are other swallows, that streak-throated swallows, they nest in the colony, so they make
Yeah,
those
yeah.
tunnel shaped nests and they stay together. But barn swallows mostly solitary. They do get to
So,
occupy the same area of the nesting site, but nesting mostly solitary.
so you mentioned the age of the nesting site, and I'm just wondering if it is families that nest together, if offsprings nest close to parents or something. Could be,
Yeah,
right?
it's an interesting question. It happened so when I was serving with local people along the Himalayan region, and I would ask them ki for how many years you are seeing this nest in your property, and they would say ki 5 years, 10 years, or whatever years, and then they would say these birds come back to the same nest. Some people would say that, and some people would say their babies come back to the same nest and they build their nest here. And I would just wonder, I would say, how can they come back here? Because for me, I'm thinking in those ecological aspect and all. So they said no, otherwise how would they remember that their nest is in our second room? Because they come back to the same nest. So
Yes.
either either the parents are the same bird that are coming back, or maybe the juveniles or the young birds. As part of the ringing activity, I also ring the juveniles or the just hatched birds, the
Yeah,
fledglings. And interestingly, I do not see them in the same nesting area.
very interesting. But do you know where they're
Yes.
going? You don't know, right?
I have not yet found any individual, but only one individual that I had ringed in Masuri. It went to aerial distance, it would be only 5 kilometers or something, but it is nesting now in another village called Kempty. That
Yeah, I
part, but
mean,
only one juvenile.
yeah, because juvenile dispersal is a complete black box. Like we have
Yes,
very little information from any species about
yes,
where they disperse, how far, and
yes. So that's why we need to go and do recapturing of more and more individuals and try to find where these birds are
yeah,
going.
yeah. I think Manjari's done some work with babblers on that. Have you
Hmm.
seen that?
I have, but I don't remember the dispersal distance. But yes, there
Yeah.
have been some studies. Yes.
I was asking her about it, and I think she said females disperse closer than males. Males go further away, but I could be
Okay.
wrong. Anyway,
In my case, it was the male that I recaptured from the other side. Yeah.
okay. But yeah, that's
Yes.
a nice, I think it'll be an interesting thing to study.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about their courtship.
Okay. So barn swallows are actually a very known model for sexual selection across the world. So so this is a question that people ask me, why do you study barn swallows? Because they're very common and very small bird. Like even among the birders, they don't even look at the swallows group or martin group because they're too difficult to identify. So they just ignore these birds. But this is a question that I get, and I got interested in the species because of the literature that is available from outside India. Very widely studied birds. That is, I have this book also on the barn swallows.
Right.
This is the compilation of all the studies in Europe and the US. But unfortunately, India is like lacking. We don't have a single ecological study on barn swallows before my study. And from their findings, the species is very famous in terms of sexual selection because the males do display their features to impress the females. So what happens is during the courtship, when the male is establishing the territory and it is trying to impress a new female, so it would continuously sing and sing, and it would be like a, I would say, 5 to 6 seconds note that it would continuously sing, and it would end with some uttering, or I don't know, I cannot just, yeah, beside the same note. But yes, it would do that. And then it would also do some acrobatics in the air and also try to show its tail wings, tail feathers. Because in the
Right.
male
Those
barn
long
swallows
wires.
have, yes, have long tail streamers. So the longer the tail streamers, the more attractive the male is in the
Hmm.
terms of swallows, in barn swallows. And also not just the tail streamers. So when the tail is spread, you have white spots on the tail,
Yes.
and the male have more broader and more longish white spots. So that is one of
Oh,
the feature that females look for, like good genes.
wow.
And also the plumage, the more shiny plumage the bird has. So that is how they try to impress the female. And then if the female is impressed, then they're nesting.
Yeah,
Yes.
so it tells you a lot about what the bird can see, right? To be able to see a male's tail spots in flight, will need
Yes.
incredible vision.
Yes. And also to judge how well they are singing, how well they're
Yeah,
looking.
yes,
Yes.
really good ears. And also to be able to catch insects in flight, right? Like
Yes.
some really sophisticated aerial maneuvers they're capable of.
Yes. Yes.
So is the flight also been studied?
Yes, so there are studies. They show that the maneuverability in flight and all the dynamics that they do. And interestingly, they have found that the males with long tail streamers have a little bit poor flight abilities than the other males. So this is how the sexual selection and also the natural selection is balancing here.
Wow.
Yes. So in order to impress the females, males are somewhat compromising with their flying abilities in this term.
Very
Yeah.
interesting. So it's not a good indicator of ability to catch insects, maybe. And
Yes.
they're using tactile stuff, right? They're using whiskers to do the last
Yes.
minute insect
So
grasping.
yes, so when you hold a bansol in your hand and if you see the feathers around the ear covers and also along the eyes, you would notice there is the feathers are coming out of the eyes. That is to avoid the wind that coming on their face when they're in flight. So all these adaptabilities they are in their body to avoid because they are undertaking these fast flights in the air, and to
Right.
avoid that wind pressure they have these feathers that just cut across those winds and they are able to fly and catch insects, and also very sharp eyes and sharp beaks to spot the insects and catch the insects in air.
Right.
Yes.
And during migration, how long can they sustain a flight?
Again, studies from outside they have found that in case of barn swallows, the population, so some populations actually cross the oceans like the Red Sea and all from the Europe and the Africa when they go. And mostly, and one some population also cross the Sahara Desert,
Right.
and they
Wow.
cannot stop anywhere over
Right.
the Sahara Desert. So it could be that long, but for some population, they do need these little stopovers for feeding and then gaining energy and then going again to fly. That is why these wetlands that come in between, or the reed beds that come in between, or some habitats that come along the path of the migration are very critical for migratory
Right.
species such as the swallows and other birds.
Right. Really
Yeah.
interesting. Anything else that you want to tell me about their natural history before we move on to spaces that they inhabit?
Okay, yes, because I see I don't want to answer some questions that are there in the previous sort. Okay, yeah.
How do they evade predators is something we didn't talk about.
Yes, I have observed so for barn swallows, even humans are predators at times if they're
Mm-hmm.
coming very close to their nest, even though they nest near humans. But I have observed from my nest observation days that they do get recognized, they do recognize people from their like so it is because when they're nesting in any property, they know that their nest is safe, nobody's noticing it. So that is how they are
Right.
fine with it. But if I am going with the intention of looking
Of
at
looking
in
at
the
them.
nest,
Correct.
yeah, looking
Yes.
at the nest and looking at the birds, and the moment they see that somebody is continuously looking at
Yes.
the nest, they just get panic and they would start giving alarm calls. There have been incidents that the adult barn swallows are hovering over my head. You should go away. So
Right.
those are the incidents. But the main predators that I see in the breeding season are mostly domestic cats
Mm.
which people host in their houses. So they do try and catch birds, especially the young birds, because they're not that much able to fly that fast. So
Right.
cats do get hold of them. Cats, sometimes even dogs, and sometimes rats, because the rats can actually go over the ceiling and snatch away the eggs. For all these things, what I've observed, the swallows will start making alarm calls. And if one particular nest is in danger, once the other swallows nesting along this nest, they would also come and they would also start shrieking calls and alarm calls, and they would just alarm the whole colony that there is some harmful thing here that is present here that we need to look for. So
Right.
similar they do with the presence of sparrows and other birds that can
Right.
harm their nest.
So nesting success would then be correlated to colony size, right? In that case.
So yes, the nests that are in more solitary areas or maybe away from the colony do have little nesting success than less nesting success than the nests that are present at the middle of the colony. So that
Right.
is that's the cost and benefit of it, because
Okay.
benefit maybe they do have some more space for feeding or foraging and
Yeah.
all,
Yeah.
but usually the young birds that those who do not have experience to hold the territories or to go to find the best nest for themselves, they are moved out of the colony and they have to go and make the nest outside. Yeah.
Okay, so barn swallows, you mentioned, have these very distinct patterns of they're either migratory or they're resident in some places. And it's a
Yes.
very weird pattern, like especially now with citizen science data from eBird, you get
Hmm.
this I don't know if there is a pattern at all. It's so random, right? Do you think
Yes.
there is a correlation about where they're migratory and where they're residents?
So you've asked very interesting question because part of my thesis is to look at eBird data and see the distribution of barn swallows, their migratory patterns, and understand the climatic drivers that are influencing their movements. So when I started looking at it, first I was looking only from the perspective of India. Okay,
Right.
so here are the birds in summer, here are the birds in winter. When I expanded, broadened my view, and there were some studies from China where they have tagged the birds and they are coming to India in winter season. So then this thought came in, okay, so there are population that are coming from above more higher latitudes also and are entering in India. And when I survey for barn swallows in the Himalayan region, some people say they do not see the birds in next 6 months in winters, and some say they do stay here throughout the year, and some would say no, they leave in November and they come back in January. So there are differences. Maybe they are showing small distance or short distance migrations, or maybe some of the populations are showing long distance migrations. So there are differences in the population, how they are, and it is also to do with their history. So the populations who have been coming from very far, they are still going that far, and some populations, because of the changes in climatic conditions, and they're finding it more appropriate to stay here throughout the year and not waste their energy and fly really far off. So one population which is interesting, which is not a migratory one. So across the Himalayan region, we know that these birds are migratory. But if we go to Northeast India, particularly in Imphal Valley, we see barn swallows that are present there throughout the year. So they are resident
Really?
birds. They are resident. And in winters, if you go, then also the pair would be near the nest.
Very interesting. And they would be competing with striated swallows there, right? Sorry, the red
The
rump
streak throat
swallows.
so
Streak.
the streak throated swallows are there, so but they don't nest near houses, so they don't
No,
nest in
but
the
there
house.
are, sorry, there is red
Red drum
rump,
swallow.
no? The red rump
Yes, red drum.
equivalent
Yes.
of the Northeast. There's another one, the slightly larger one.
So in northeast the striated swallow is there, but red drum swallow do compete with barn swallows for nest, but red drum swallows are mostly towards the outside of the property. They don't like to be around humans.
Correct.
So they would be more in a solitary space like corridors where there is less
Right.
movement. But barn swallows would be just there where there is a vegetable shop, people are coming here and there, and barn swallow nest would be there only. They like to be around humans. And that is actually one strategy to avoid predators. That is what I have observed.
And
Uh,
avoid competition, I guess.
Avoid competition maybe, but avoid predators, because what I have observed, if they are nesting inside, so the nest of a barn swallow is open from outside. But if
Yes.
you see a nest of a red drum swallow, it's closed and it's a tunnel shaped nest. So red drum swallow have one advantage in its nest building behavior, that they do have this protection that only they can go in when the nest is
Right.
complete. But barn swallows is open. You just go and remove the eggs and it's gone. That's why they like to be inside the properties, because they have protection from humans. And usually if the bird is nesting here in my house and if I see some other bird, maybe a bigger bird, larger size bird, or maybe a cat, if it is coming inside, I will just shoo them away. Like, don't harm these birds, no? So that is how they get aided benefit if they're nesting inside. And I
So
have
they're using
observed,
human presence as a shield.
yes, and I observed in scenarios where they do not have the access to that shop or that property, where people have changed their architecture, or the nest is not no longer available. So that bird has gone and and is now nesting in the corridor of that area. And in that same corridor, for the last 4 years, if the barn swallow nest is here, red drum swallow would compete and it would build whole tunnel over the nest of the barn swallow, and that is how they are competing. So barn swallows outside are in more danger if they don't get
Okay.
aided protection. Yeah, and coming back to northeast, the straight-tailed swallows, they do not nest inside human houses, or they don't.
Right.
We don't see them. They're mostly towards cliffs and bridges.
Okay.
like the swallows used to do earlier. Even the barn swallows
Okay.
used to nest in cliffs and rock crevasses before humans started building their settlements.
Where do you know this from?
So this is also from research that was done in Russia and also in the Europe. So they have found that the barn swallows used to nest in rock crevasses, like we do see for some swallows and swifts also, and rocky cliffs. But slowly, when humans started to develop more settlements, they found that
Right.
this is making them more protected.
Yes.
Again, the protection is more, and they started slowly moving towards the properties, and especially because the swallows are maybe smaller in size, so humans would not harm them. And also in the Himalayan region, people are okay with swallows because they do not eat their grains or their rations. So they are
Correct.
only eating insects, so they're not harming the humans also in that terms.
So there is no
Yeah.
negative effect of having a
No
swallow
negative,
around,
yeah. Apart
except
from
yeah.
apart from the dirt that comes with the buns, the
Yes,
poop
that's what I was going to
everywhere.
ask you. So there must
Yeah.
be droppings all over the place, no?
Yes, there must be. So these are like very interesting aspects that I noticed from humans along the Himalayan region. My first interaction, what I saw the nest of barn swallow was in a restaurant in Missouri. And I could see that the birds are just flying around, and there are young birds also. And young birds, they would poop inside only. They won't just go out, and so they're flying, and they're just droppings everywhere. People, so this is the table of the, like, for the, what, in the restaurant there are tables, and that table will also have those droppings on it, and some people would just be fine with it, okay, but some, so there are those negative interactions in this term, but people are very, what I would say, very tolerant. So in that many places, because the swallows are nesting, they do not want to destroy the nest, so what they do is they put a cardboard under the nest, so whatever dropping is coming from the babies, it would be just there in that cardboard, and they would just take that cardboard, throw it, and put a new cardboard there. And some people
Okay.
actually tells me that this also gives a protection to the young birds, because sometimes when the space is less in the nest, some of the swallow chicks, they fall out of the nest. And if they
Yeah.
fall on the ground, they would die. So if they are putting a cardboard, they would at least be safe. So yeah, that is what I have observed. But in Kashmir and Manipur, the swallows have taken hold of entire room. So if you see, whole walls are splashed with the droppings. So it's like a modern art that somebody has done. So people are quite tolerant, especially if it is in a rural area. But if it is in tourist spot, so people are less tolerant, because of course their source of income, their shop property is getting affected because of the birds. Yeah.
So questions. Why are people tolerating swallows?
Okay. So people are tolerating swallows. First, they tell me that ideally they should not harm any living being that is nesting near them. It's like a house. It's like you destroy
Mm-hmm.
a house, it's not a good thing. But more specifically, specifically in Himachal, Uttarakhand, Nepal, maybe, I don't know, I only know a part of it, and Sikkim and North Bengal. Also in Manipur, people consider that these birds they are like goddess Lakshmi, because they think that if this bird is coming and nesting in their property, they are bringing good luck, maybe prosperity, but they see these birds as a sign of good luck. So people often tell me, so whenever I go and I ask them, where else do you know that these birds are nesting? And they would say they don't nest everywhere. They only select few houses or few shops. So some people actually, like one of the ladies, she told me these birds have a sense to get the vibe from you. So if you are giving a good vibe, then only these birds will come and nest in your property. They will not go anywhere in this village. You will not find them everywhere. So they're very selective. So people, and even they were adamant when I went and I said, ki I am studying the nesting ecology. I have the permission, but I do have to talk to them, make them feel comfortable. What am I doing and all? So I would say now I have to look in the nest, and they were like, "Don't touch the nest. They will abandon the nest." Then I had to tell,
Yeah.
"No, it's okay. I would only see when the adults are not around and all." But they were cooperative. But that is how they have this strong connection with these birds, that they bring good luck. That is one thing. But if you, so it's again regional. So when I went to Kashmir, there I think it is to do with the religion also. So there people said ki it's just they consider these birds as what, some like a part of God. They don't think that these birds are going to bring good luck or money to them, but it's just that ki they are embodiment of God to them, because there is a mention of swallows in Quran. And so the Muslim community related with that. So they do consider these birds to be very auspicious. So that is there. And in Manipur, same story. They are only nesting in the valley, in Imphal Valley, which is different than the entire Himalayan region. So entire Himalayan region, these birds are nesting in the hills from 1,000 meter to 2,000 meter elevation. But in Manipur, they are nesting at 700 meters. So they're nesting quite low and only in the valleys, not in the hills. Because when I went there, I could see in the valley, it's predominant Meitei community, and they again consider these birds as goddess Lakshmi. So that is how that's why people are tolerant. And also because they have developed this sense that these birds are coming in their shops for many years. So their
Yes.
elder generation have also seen these birds and they have told them to not disturb these birds. So they are just continuing on that. So yeah, that is why they're tolerant.
And if you wanted to inculcate this tolerance in a place where it does not exist, what would you do?
Yes. So I do have observed some of the sites, specifically those sites where tourist influx is a lot and where the swallow nesting is quite recent. It's not that old. So if I say an example of Masuri and Nainital, both are hotspots, tourism hotspots. But in Nainital, people have their properties for above 100 years and so on. And barn swallows are also nesting there for almost 70 to 80 years. That is what people told me. So there people are very protective of these birds. But again, so if you go in the mall road, like the hotspot of Nainital and also in Masuri, you will not find a single swallow nesting there because people have slowly transformed their buildings. Architecture has completely changed. They are using false ceilings. They're using glass windows or glass doors that repel the swallows because you don't give them entry to enter your building, so they won't be able to nest. So I do get to speak to a lot of people who say that these birds are menace, they create problems to us. You should take them with you. We don't want them to nest here anymore. And but then what I try to do is build this sense ki there is a sense of attachment because these birds are coming to the same property every year. So that is how I do it to them personally. But if I want to take it to on a larger scale, it is to do reach with the local people and also through schools and colleges and make children aware that what is this bird that is nesting around them, because they know that there is a bird nesting but they don't know the ecological importance or the existence of this bird or the
Right.
biology or the life cycle of this bird. So that is how, so even when we go for ringing, we do encounter a lot of children who are curious. They're like, what are you doing? So they call me Chidiya Wali Didi in this village. So I tell them, okay, so this is the bird, this is coming from very far. You have to, protect its nest, don't disturb it. But again, there is this detachment which is coming in the younger generation, because most of the younger generation, particularly in the hills of Uttarakhand, they are moving outwards. They're not residing in the villages anymore for employment opportunities and so on. And also during the surveys of the state, I found so many villages being abandoned. So people are just leaving their farms because of the agriculture, because of the climate vulnerability and all those stuff. So everything is just abandoned. And if there is nothing, barn swallows would not be there, because I have observed they are not nesting in abandoned buildings. Yes.
That is
So
very interesting. That
yes.
why they avoid abandoned buildings is.
Because
Yeah,
there's
so
no
Uh,
longer the human shield for protection.
that is also
that's
there, and there's an increase
amazing.
of competition because in abandoned buildings, I see little swifts are nesting, martins
Correct.
are nesting, redrum swallows will nest, but barn swallows won't. They won't be there. So they are
Yeah.
just
Also,
there where
I'm
human presence is there.
guessing like owls and stuff would start roosting then also.
Yes, and also snakes and
Yeah, a lot of
other
predators
animals.
basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So
basically,
I do see.
they figured out that yeah, human rooms are the best because they'll keep out all the pests. Like
Yeah.
Yeah, some of the humans are so nice that in the hills. So I asked them, "Ki, you have the ceiling fan. So if the nest is inside, isn't it going to hurt the birds?" So they say, yes, it does happen. So what we do in summer, we keep the fan off. And some of the people have actually put the table fan because they don't want to turn on the ceiling
hmm.
fan. So they're putting the table fan with them. So the birds are not under any harm.
And do you think, sorry, coming back to the question I was asking, so
Yes.
do you think increasing awareness can bring about tolerance like this? Or is there something else? Oops, sorry, my power just went off.
Yeah. So awareness is one
Yes.
thing, but the other thing that I see is that connect. The connect has to be there. So the people who still feel very close with barn swallows, they do actually wait for them, I would say. So if in one season they don't come, they would ask me, "Oh, my birds have not come." So that connect is has to be maintained. And also it's like we are blindly changing our architecture and everything. So I go there and I tell them that I come from Delhi and I would not be so even the people around me won't be this tolerant how much that you are tolerating for this species. But that connect is, I think we have to maintain that connect because all these years I have observed if people will stop making spaces for these birds, they really would face big challenges because they're not sustaining that the nest is not in success outside the properties. Yeah. Apart from awareness, it's more like bringing people together and telling them that maybe making them citizen scientists and asking them the questions of whether your birds have come,
Yeah,
inform us.
yeah. But it's incredible, no? Like I can't really think of anything that can replace that bond that grows on its own.
Yes.
And that it exists in some places itself is quite something.
Yeah, when I was presenting this work in an international conference in the UK, so I thought I will talk about this human interactions and swallows. And barn swallows are nesting everywhere. They're everywhere in the northern hemisphere and they are nesting. And the name barn swallow, barn actually came from the Europe only that they were nesting in the barns and all. And there the audience was amazed how people in the Indian region are tolerant of these birds. And people came to me and they're like, "Ki, we don't see these birds nesting this close to us and they are nesting but in the cow sheds in barns only, and most of the research which shows that these birds are in decline in Europe and Canada, they show that nest site availability is the main reason, loss of
Correct.
nest site availability. So that is why I think it is very much important to keep this connect intact.
That's why maybe
Yes.
they're not migrating back to Europe. They figured out, oh, this is better, better
That is completely
place.
different population. Yeah.
So one question, you said they nest in shops and you said they sleep in the nest at night. So how do they access the nest at night?
Oh, okay. Swallows are very smart. So what they would do is around 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. when it's just about to get dark, they would make more rounds to the nest and they know that this shop is going to get closed at this time.
No way.
And once it's dark, they are just inside. You can go there, people are doing their own business, and both the birds are near the nest. They will not go out. Maybe twice or thrice, one of the individual will just fly out and see and then come back. But they know that this is the time. And more importantly, people know that their birds have not come, so they would wait to close the shutter. And
Wow.
so last week only we were searching. So in our nest, female was present, but male was nowhere to be seen. And I wanted to see because it was a recapture bird. We were waiting for that bird to come back. And I was asking, it was a barber shop, and I was asking, ki, uncle, when will the bird come? He's, I don't know. It's ji ka malik hai. I don't know. It will come, but it will come. So he said, ki, before I close my shop, the bird will come. It's moving quite a lot these days. I said, okay. But then they also tell me some of the people so what happens in the hills, no, first room of the property is usually the shop, and at the back there also the house of the same people, so they're
Right.
residing there inside. So they would say ki, oh, these birds are so annoying in the morning at 5 o'clock. They're like, cha, 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 open the gate. We want to go out. So they will say ki, especially in the nesting season when the babies are there in the nest. So they have to go out at the earliest
Yes.
hour to catch insects. So people are like, they are used to it. They would just open the shutter, okay, go and do about whatever the business is. So they know the timings. The birds know the timings. People know the birds' timings, and that is how
And
they
this
manage.
one-to-one connection is like the thing, no? Like in a lot of
Yeah,
rural places, I've noticed
yeah,
people talk of not just other species, but other individuals of the species, like my bird that
yes,
nest here. Or if
yeah,
they have a herd of goats, watch out for that one that will hit you, or things like
yes,
that.
yes.
And I think
They're more observant.
that is, yeah, being observant is what's missing now, I
Yes.
think.
And similar to this, because in Uttarakhand, most of the nests that I found were in shops. But in Kashmir, in Manipur, because they are in rural areas, so they're still nesting in the houses. But in Uttarakhand, they're not nesting in houses much because I think because we have changed the architecture, the houses are not open throughout the day, so they cannot move in and out.
Right.
So they're nesting in shops, and during my PhD time, I found that 2 years of my data collection was wasted because of lockdown. So in 2022, when I went back to collect data, this was the first question that I was asking people. Since the swallows are nesting inside your shops, what happened during lockdown? Because you had to close the shops. What happened to the
Right.
nesting? And most about, I would say 40-50% people told me that the nesting failed because the birds could not access the nest. But more interestingly, they showed me that they actually cut a part of the shutter, like this small square,
Yes.
for just the birds to enter into the shop and do about their business and go out. So this is how people were more welcoming to the birds. And this time also they would say कि हमने SDO से बात कर ली थी. They gave us special permission to keep the shutter this much open for the birds so that they could come and go out.
So cool. Getting permission from the SDO for the barn
Mm,
swallows.
yes. Where else would you see that?
Yeah, that's true coexistence.
Yes.
Cool. Have we covered that? Let me just see if we've covered everything.
Yes.
You said they have only very small negative effects, which is that they litter a lot.
Hmm.
What are the benefits of sharing space with them? Why should we share space with barn swallows?
Okay. If I see from the point of view of the local people that actually host the swallows, it's just they relate the bird with part of family, part of their own family. They're just very happy to see that bird. They're chirping, singing, and our bird is back. So I got a very beautiful picture of in one of the Tari Khet near Rani Khet, where the person was telling me, so he showed the nest in his shop, and then he said, come to my house upstairs, you would see more nests there. I said, okay. So I went upstairs and I could see one, two, three in corridor, and in the living room itself there were four nests. And then his wife was also there. Both of them were showing me, ki, you see this wind chime that is present in the middle of our living room. It's full of poop of barn swallow because it's the favorite spot of that bird. And it just comes, it just sit on it and it would just sing and go. And while we were looking at that, one bird actually came and sat on that wind chime. And they were so happy. They were like, oh, what we were saying, she could see that. I think this is the presence of this bird, maybe for that short duration. It's like a guest that is coming to your house for 5 or 6 months. just need some space and that's all. So that's how people, they just like the company of the swallow. And that is why they complain when the birds don't come. They're like, what happened this year? Why have not they come?
Right.
Or
Right.
even if I'm ringing, they would say ki they will be safe. No, you're not harming them, whether they'll come back or not. It's
Right.
just like the connection that they have built with the birds that they find it happier to have a bird
Yes.
inside their house.
Yes. There's a small bit of magic in their lives because
Yes.
of the birds.
Yes.
That's thank you so much for sharing all of this with us. It's really
Yeah,
nice to
thank
hear all
you.
of this.
Yes.
I think we've covered most of it. Is there anything else that you had thought of that you wanted to tell us that I did not ask you?
I think everything I have shared, apart from the population differences that I'm studying on barn swallows,
Right.
if
Yes.
you're
Yes.
interested
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
that.
Please.
Yeah.
Yes. We were talking
So
about that.
yes, so I'm also looking at how these populations are different from each other and when did they actually colonize the Himalayan region? Because the settlements, if you see in the Himalayas, are relatively recent than other areas.
Right.
So when did these birds actually come here and settled here for making their nest? And so right now, what my data is showing that there are certain populations. So Kashmir birds are a little bit different than what birds are nesting in Uttarakhand, and that is how they are also that is how I am hypothesizing that their migratory routes would also be different because they are different populations, the genetic makeup and also the history of these birds, history of these populations would be different. So the Kashmir ones are more closely related to the European populations, and the central Himalayan region birds are mostly Asian birds. And then the birds that are sitting in Manipur are entirely different. So
Right.
right now I'm very curious. So there is this hypothesis that some birds from Russia colonized North Americas and then they came back to Russia.
Right.
So there was again a colonization event that happened. And right now what I'm looking at, these birds might have come to India at that time and then expanded. Don't know. We're still looking at that. But it's really
Wow.
crazy that we are finding. So yeah, that's the interesting part. Another interesting part of the
That is really interesting. And you have samples from both the migratory and the resident populations.
Yes, I have the samples from both the migratory and the populations. And also last year I could manage to get some crowdsource funding to put
Hmm.
the tags on these birds, the
Yes.
geolocator tags. So because
Wow.
these birds are very tiny, cannot use the satellite tags, cannot get the active transmission data. So these geolocator help us to store the amount of sunlight and all wherever the birds are flying. And this season I went and out of 15 till now I caught 3 birds with the tags on. So
And you
we
had tagged
have,
adults.
yeah, we are tagged adults. Yes,
Wow.
because
And what do
weight
you know?
also. Yeah, so now I have to extract the data from those tags. It's little complicated, but once we know, that would be like first information from India, we will know that where these birds are going. And I hope those tags give me good data because, and it's very difficult to get more recapture, especially for these small size birds. So out of
Right.
15, I have gotten yet 3 birds, but I'm hoping I'll get more. But we'll see.
That's really
Because
nice. Good luck. Good
because
luck with
people
that.
are very, yeah, thank you. People are very curious. They will also ask me, oh, where these birds go in winters. And this time I told them, I'll
Yes.
tell you in 1 month.
So nice.
Yeah, some of the people actually told that because they think that religious aspect to it. So they say ki these birds after breeding, they go and take a dip in Ganga and then they sacrifice their life and then their babies come and nest in the same nest.
Nice.
Yeah. So people have all sorts of stories and I think I'm fortunate and privileged enough to gather some of the stories of Bansalas that people had to share.
Yes. So I've asked you things like how would you make people more tolerant in a place where they are not, or how would you foster coexistence in a place where it does not exist yet? But I will let Srini ask this one. So we're
Hmm.
collecting, Srini, do you want to ask about the recipes?
Yeah. So basically, it's like a little bit of a curious sort of project me and Sartaj are working on, is that we're speaking to people and we're seeing how to gather this information and present it, right? Because it's a lot of information, a lot of information. So what we're trying to craft is like little recipes from each of these multi-species encounters, right? And the question being that, so what is the recipe for living with multi-species, especially like barn swallow, for example, right? So what is the
Yes.
recipe for coexistence with in a multi-species living sort of thing?
Yeah.
What's your
So
take on it?
if I have to tell people where the swallows are still nesting, and I want to tell them please keep the nest intact so that these birds come back again in the next years. And people do that. They keep the nest intact, most of them. But what would be the major thing is not to change the infrastructure of their building, be more tolerant, because what has happened is even the village people are under the impression of this modernization and all, even when it is not required. It's I'm not saying that you should not put a ceiling fan, because of course the weather is getting warmer and warmer, climate is getting warmer, so they need that ceiling fan. But we have the examples of people who are showing more tolerance. They are keeping the doors, what traditional doors that they used to use, instead of those glass doors and glass windows. And one more thing could be done. So I know there are multiple sites where the tourist spots are there and barn swallows are also nesting. But how we can tell them ki okay, you can still make a business in your shop with tourists, and also take barn swallows as a mascot. People would be more interested to see, because all of them are coming from plains and they have never seen this phenomenon before. Most of the time people say, oh, have you kept this nest here? Is it like a domesticated bird? So for them it's like a curiosity driven phenomena that is occurring. So even telling the people, keep the nest intact and make the tourist also aware ki this is what is unique about my shop. This is what how the birds are nesting and adapting. And yeah, so most of the times is that major changes that are happening is because of architecture. So tolerance in that, and also transferring information to the younger generation, how you again be more tolerant and be more welcoming towards the swallows. Yes, what else I can think of? And also, especially in the case of Amur falcons, what we observed when we put the satellite tags on those birds, we named those birds as the name of the village or on the name of Nagaland or Mani. People could relate it to more. They were like, this is their own bird. And they
Correct.
were
Create some
praying for
pride.
the
Yeah.
yes, they were praying for the safety and the safe return of the bird to come back to their area. So like this time when I've started the tagging of these birds, maybe people will be more curious now. They'll be like, oh, where my bird has gone? Where was it in winters? Even by using this science and technology thing into it, that will make a huge impact.
Yeah. No, it's a lot of amazing things. One thing that, see, all these recipes we're saying human behavior has to change, because the animals will just sense our behavior and adapt.
Yes.
They just are
Yes.
sensing, they sense this love from the people, and they are like, they have made people's home their homes because they see that love. Otherwise, they would have run away. They would have
Yes.
realized that, this. So, yeah, so that behavior, that in COVID, that they cut open a little hole in the shutter just
Yes.
to let these people, this barn swallows
Birds.
access, birds come, is a beautiful gesture. I think we need some things like that, I think. So I think
Yes.
that's what you were also saying also, that, don't change the infrastructure so much, make them accessible, keep it.
Yes. And
So
some
that,
people also complain. So whenever they're even modifying the paint of their shop, and accidentally if the painter has put some paint on the nest, and
they'll
they
complain.
think that the bird is not coming because the nest is disturbed. And they're
Oh,
like,
wow.
oh, we have painted the nest and that's why the bird is not coming. And at one shop I saw they have changed the ceiling, like false ceiling. They've installed those things. But where the bird was nesting, they've left that space there. So it's just, yeah. So everyone else is that modern architecture, but in middle, they have left the space for the bird.
That's
So
amazing.
maybe that's small
Yeah.
initiatives or yeah.
Yeah. I think it's
Gestures.
a small gesture which is really big
Yes.
for this little creatures.
Yeah.
Interesting points.
Yeah.
And we'll
yes.
process it again. And It's
Let me
awesome.
know if anything is missing.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much for talking to us.
Yeah. Thank you.